are listening to Day 2 of the Chompcast Game of the Year podcast. This is the show where we're going to count down our top 5 games of the year. This is the grand finale of all grand finales. Now, if you missed Day 1, for some reason, if you found this podcast first, make sure you go back in your feed and check out Day 1 of our Game of the Year podcast. It was exciting. It was contentious at times, interesting, and fascinating to see how those picks shaked out. So don't miss Day 1. It's vital to the whole story, as they would say. But yeah, so today is Day 2. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to count down our top 5 games of the year. And what I'm going to do, actually, for the crew is I'm going to introduce each of you as we sort of segue into your personal 5th choice for Game of the Year. So we'll kind of go round robin here, and I'll introduce you, and then you'll be able to give me your number 5 choice for best Game of the Year. So it's going to be a lot of fun. This is it, the moment that we have all been waiting for. All right, so let's start off. I'm going to throw it to Josh first. Joshua Fowler is here from Michigan, the rustler of Jimmys, as they say, the Jimmy Rustler. Last episode, if you listened, me and Josh are going to call a truce this episode because last episode, Josh got my Jimmy's rustling so fast, the molecules in my body were just vibrating, and I almost spontaneously combusted. That can happen, right?
I have that effect.
Mm-hmm. It was just like, yeah, spontaneous combustion. But now it's back. Everything's calmed down. We're calling a truce for today. Everything's okay.
Seems like a waste. I put so many talent points into that skill, but yeah.
Well, that's always a bummer. You go all the way down that skill tree, and it's just, not getting you the desired result that you were hoping for.
Yeah.
You're filling in your character and profession. It's one of the blank ones, and you fill in Jimmy Rustler. Just all right.
Jimmy.
Maybe we'll use it in 2019.
Yeah. I mean, those custom classes are getting a lot more support in recent editions.
They're getting quite elaborate, huh?
Yeah.
So that's what I should have done during the last part when it got real bad. Pardon me while I burst into the flames. Anyways, little incubus for you guys. So Josh, let's kick it off here for you. What is your choice for your 5th favorite game of 2018?
I've told Shay this earlier, but like my top 7 are all so close together that I've been having a really tough time with this one this year. There's so many good games came out this year, but cuts had to be made, and at the end of the year, 5 had to be The Missing.
Okay,
J.J.
The Missing.
Macfield and the Island of Memories.
The sweary joint.
Which was something I was not really expecting to like going into it, just kind of with my history of a lot of his other games. But I feel like he kind of finally found a way to make his quirkiness work. And it was just really, really an affecting game going through that. That also had one of my favorite, I briefly mentioned this before, but had one of my favorite mechanics of the year. From like a story perspective, excuse me.
Is that just the destruction of your? I played like 2 hours of it. I was actually surprised that you were enjoying it so much because it reminded me sort of like an Inside kind of a thing. But so like you throw yourself against objects to like basically dismember yourself, and then
any damage you take to your body is permanent until you decide to fix it, and so you can like use your own body parts for puzzles, either by like placing them on switches or by taking so much damage that you're just a head rolling around to get places you want to go.
Yeah, the only
And
one I did was one where like it was like a bridge, and I had to keep it up by like exploding my body a couple times to where like part of my corpse was on the left side, and then like the half of my corpse, like the torso portion, was crawling across the now weighted bridge, so it was like flattened out.
Yeah, it's really like the first time it happens, you think, oh well, I guess I died here, and then the game keeps going, as you just kind of drag your bits of a corpse along behind you, continuing on, and I'm like, okay, I guess this is just like a story beat moment or something. And then it kind of turns out to be a running mechanic for the rest of the game, which is really cool. And they have just a lot of neat puzzles built around that, just from a mechanical side of it. But then also the story that they're telling with that mechanic is really, really cool. But it kind of gets into a lot of the spoilers at the end that, don't really want to get into yet.
Who is she talking to on the phone? Is that her? Like, is that a plushie, like a doll? Was it like?
Oh yeah, it's like her stuffed animal, like her.
Okay, so that's what she was holding.
Toy stuffed animal that she had at the beginning of the game. Yeah,
it was just kind of hard for me to tell with the visual style what that was. I couldn't tell if it was like a little creature or what. But But whenever it calls you on the phone, it looks like kind of like a teddy bear or something like that, kind of a thing. That's come to life or something. I don't know. It's very strange.
God, this game sounds quirky as fuck.
It is. It's got a lot of the same quirkiness that Deadly Prem had, and as much as I enjoyed the story and really wanted to kind of see that through, it like just didn't work as a shooter, and so it just made it kind of hard to play through. But this one, because it's a side-scrolling puzzle platformer, it's still got some of the same sort of like floaty issues that genre basically always has once you start getting a little physicsy at all.
Yeah.
But it's not bad. Like, I've played a lot of puzzle platformers that are just frustrating because stuff will just kind of like jitter and bounce off a switch that you were trying to weight down or something like that. And this is nothing like that. So,
okay. Okay, cool. I have some questions I can ask you about that later on when we organize the group list for whatever reason, but I guess it just sort of it's weird because that game is kind of, I don't think too many people are aware of it. We almost missed it. I mean, that's kind of a late edition for you. I know you just played it like a week and a half ago.
Yeah, I
or
played
something.
it like halfway through December, just because it came out right when everything big was coming out. Like that whole Spider-Man and Red Dead 2, and also a bunch of other really good indie games were coming out at that point as well. And so I just got buried. Like that was right around the same time Crosscode came out. So I had my plate full and then almost completely missed it. But just the story in that game is so affecting that it's really, really stuck with me.
Interesting. Okay. All right, number 5, The Missing. Wait, what's the subtitle for that? It's got a weird name.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, it's The Missing, J.J. Macfield, and the Island of Memories.
Okay.
But
there you go.
Everyone's just going to call it The Missing, because, that's just... Yeah.
The Missing, I think, just call it The Missing for all of our sakes. That's a weird one. Okay. Number 5, The Missing. That segs
some way.
Ooh, seg some way. Let's seg some way. That segues me to.
Do you seg the way?
I seg the way to a man that needs no introduction. The Filipino Johnny Depp from Texas. We call him Fish. Fish, I mean, last year, I know you really caused a fracas last year. I just wanted to say the word fracas. It was full of fracas.
What the fuck is a fracas?
Well, it's a fracas whenever Morgan's doing it.
Is it fracas? Fracas? Fracas?
Fracas.
Oh.
Fracas?
I think you say fracas. It's not too well.
I like to say a frucas.
Have you never said the fracas?
The frucas.
I think
it's
you should say ruckus.
No. You didn't cause a ruckus, though. It was a fracas, okay?
What's the difference? What the fuck is the difference between a fracas and a ruckus?
One Morgan can pronounce perfectly, the other one... and he chose the one he cannot.
I'm trying to look up the official definition for fracas.
Here we go. Once again, defending his name and honor in
it says no result for fracas.
pronunciation.
So...
Oh, you guys made up that fucking word.
I guess it's made up. God damn it, I know it's a
You
real
made up
thing.
that fracas word.
Son of a bitch. Oh, well.
How are you trying to find this? I'm curious to know. What exactly did you type in there?
Fracas? F-R-A-U-C-U-S? Is that right?
Well, that would be your issue. Try F-R-A-C-A-S.
F-R-A-C-A-S, yes, exactly.
C-A-S. Oh, yeah, that sounds right. Fracas. Okay, all right. So, fracas fish is a noisy disturbance or quarrel.
I've been known to get into a few quarrels back in my day.
So
you said that like
say it with that accent.
The way he said
really
that
think
reminds
you're
me
meaning
of
to
the
say
meme.
Squirrels.
Yeah, it reminds me of the meme of like when Rick would always say "Coral" to his son.
Oh,
you know, like the meme,
Coral.
Coral.
You've been known to get into some squirrels back in your day, Fish? I mean, pigeons is one thing, but come on. Squirrels?
It's the next evolutionary step.
They're harder to catch.
Goes
All
from
right,
flying rats to fuzzy rats. We all know where this is going.
Same.
Those flying squirrels are adorable. All right, number 5, Fish. The most controversial and polarizing best 5 list you'll find on the internet right here on the Chompcast.
That's right. Speaking of squirrels, our next game actually features a rodent in it. Yeah. Called Moss. One of the best VR games that I've ever played in my entire life, even though I haven't played that many. It was definitely an experience worth having.
I just want to put that in the back of the box.
Disclaimer.
Yeah, I had to add that.
One of the best VR games you'll ever play. Haven't really played that many of them, though. Anyway,
I mean, I've played, Resident Evil 7, and as much as I enjoyed that first 2 hour or so of that game, it's
too scary for you. Too scary.
Too scary, yeah. You know me, I'm just not one to head into a haunted house and, get my bearings straight and know what to do in those situations. Usually I just end up dead, mutilated on the floor.
We did play the bunch on the demo disc. So anyways, you've played a handful of games. The demo disc and a bunch of other random stuff that I've shoved into on your face. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I wish I had more experience with VR as far as like playing games like Moss. But Moss was definitely like a very complete, polished VR game for me. And like their whole take on VR was that I like the fact that you were able to not necessarily explore the entire world, because you would definitely glitch through the world if you tried to like maneuver your head in certain angles into the world. It would kind of glitch out a little bit and you could see through the world and stuff like that. So the game isn't necessarily a full-on like 3D explorer. It's more of like almost a side scroller type of game done in VR, which it doesn't sound appealing on paper, but when you actually do play that game, like everything is kind of set in like this 3D space, and it feels like you're looking into this very miniature world of this mouse's world, I guess. Quill is the main character, and like the story is very simple and kind of fantastical, I guess, in a way, because you know you have a mouse that doesn't talk to you, just squeaks at you, but through gestures and what's going on in the screen, you know exactly what to do and what that mouse is going through, and it's pretty simple as far as that. And I will say, like,
you could pet the mouse. You get to bond with your mouse a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, definitely. You
Rub
definitely
the belly.
do.
Yeah. Quill is just so charming in that game. Between the scale that we talked about before and the animations, which are some of the best from the year for that mouse, it just feels alive. Quill it feels, so perfect,
Right.
in that game.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly feel like that is the game that I wish I could have played the most but didn't get to play out of 2018, because I was looking forward to it so much, but to buy a VR headset just to play that game, I couldn't justify it. But fuck, was it tempting.
Well, they do have that. They do have the $200 bundle now with that and Astrobot in it, which is pretty recommendable as far as bundles go, because both those games are great. But yeah, I know what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You might have liked it the most, Shay, because you liked it before you even put on. I thought it looked kind of boring before I put on the headset. So if you think it looked really interesting before you even put that headset on, then you're probably going to be in heaven.
I probably would have enjoyed it the most out of all four of us, but it is what it is, unfortunately. It's just the nature of the beast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The nature of the beast. The VR beast. Sorry, Fish, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Is there anything else you wanted to say about Moss?
Like Josh said about the game, like, it definitely is just like feels like a first part of a story arc, I guess, but it does have a nice climax at the very end as far as like the boss that you fight. And it is a little drawn out in a good way, because you definitely don't want, that build up to just come to a head in like a first screen or something like that. Not to give away too much going on in there, but it was a great experience. Like from beginning to end, like it's a pretty short campaign, I guess, as you go through that game, and you don't necessarily feel bored because there is a lot of puzzle mechanics in there, which I definitely enjoyed using the VR, and like the way you use your VR in that game, looking around and like pulling stuff on screen, like moving a block here or lifting up a gate here or controlling an enemy to shoot, a certain object to get it to do what you want it to do. Were all very interesting, and there was times where you're controlling Quill, fighting off monsters, and trying to control another monster to like solve a puzzle in the same room, which all just felt like natural in that game. It felt intuitive at that point, and like the thought of like VR creating games like that in that sort of nature where you're able to do like all these different things on screen and control it, but still don't feel as overwhelmed, like, was very nice in that game. And I think that was my main takeaway from that game, was that there's promise in VR games, and like if developers actually take time to sit down and think of like all these great mechanics that can interpret into a VR headset for players to experience, like I'm excited. Like if there was, Moss 2 came out or something like that, or a similar game, or just another game that just had like a more polished type of feel to it, because that game also looks very beautiful in VR and very, very, very immersive. So, I had to give it props on this top 5 game list, just because it was indeed a VR game that I thoroughly enjoyed from beginning to end.
Okay. Moss it is. Clinging to the back of the stone of your top 5 list, as it should be. All right. Next up, the professor, Mr. Shay Layton, is here from Japan to give us his number 5. Shay, is this the first official year that you have been completely in Japan? Like last year when we started the podcast, you got in Japan, was it like March or something? Or am I already losing?
Yeah, the very end of March, yes. So this is the first full complete year I've been in Japan with the podcast. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy to think about.
Yeah, I know. It feels like just yesterday I got here, in a way.
Yeah.
But
I feel like... oh, yeah. Sorry, I was going to make it... I feel like just yesterday you were sitting on my couch playing PT with me in the dark.
and watching Star Trek.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yep. Oh, yeah,
That was one of the best times
definitely-
watching Star Trek.
We were definitely not inebriated, that's for sure. I can tell you that.
Yeah, something. But, yeah, so this one was really hard. Crosscode, unfortunately, didn't make my top 5 just because I didn't play enough of it. I think had I finished the game, it would have been very high on the list, but I wanted to give it to games that I finished. Celeste, unfortunately, didn't top my list either, just because it was one of those ones I had to cut off. And Morgan made a really good point that I actually sat down and thought about, and I kind of agreed with him. Had I liked it as much as I did, or as I said I did, I probably wouldn't have put it down on the very last level. Even though I got really busy with other things, I probably could have and should have still finished the game, but I didn't. So my number 5 actually went to My Memory of Us. One, because I finished the game. That's not the reason.
These disclaimers between you and Fish. Best VR title.
No,
I've
really,
played a couple.
Yeah,
My Memory of Us.
I played one or two.
I finished it.
Yeah, that's it. That's why number 5. All right. No, honestly, because I mean, the art direction in this game was my favorite art direction of this year, by far. As Morgan and I had kind of a conversation about this off screen, or off air, I guess, rather. That I feel
like
like,
the sound of that, though.
Yeah, off screen. No, the art direction to me was essential to the game. Had the art direction not been as good as it was, the game wouldn't have been near as interesting. The art direction furthered the narrative in a way that made it even more interesting. Speaking on the narrative, I think it was a very interesting point of view that was told about a very treaded on subject. World War II has been done to death, but to hear about it from the perspective of the Polish, or what Poland went through during that time, I think is something that, as Americans at least, we're not very well aware of. And I think it was an interesting way the narrative was presented to tell a very, very dark story. As we talked about in the previous podcast when we discussed the game, it is a tiny bit ham-fisted in that, like, some of the themes are very, like, just in your face type of thing, but to me, that was never really cumbersome whatsoever. I know some other people it was. For me, it was not really cumbersome. For me, it was a very cute way, and sometimes very, very difficult way to tell a story that, even though it's been told to me a million times from different perspectives, still somehow felt fresh. So at the end of the day, I mean, I love this game. It doesn't top my list because I met the developer, but that was an added bonus. It doesn't top my list because Patrick Stewart was a narrator, but I fucking love that fact. It was a really, to me, it was a really good game. It was a game that I'm surprised didn't get the accolades I feel it deserved, but nonetheless, it is what it is. And for me, number 5 is a really good spot for it.
You probably wouldn't even have heard of it had you not ran into that guy at Tokyo Game Show. I can almost guarantee you probably would have never even found that game, you know?
Right, and that's the thing. Like, I don't know if it was just like poor advertisement or it got overshadowed, what the case may be, but I feel like not enough people really heard about this game, and unfortunately, it's a game that people are going to go back to eventually and be like, "Oh man, I miss this game." Like, and I think that like the people that did hear about it like gave it fairly mixed reviews, which doesn't help at all either. So I don't know. I felt like it was a great game for an indie developer, and I definitely am happy it has a place on my list, at least on someone's list, if anything.
Yeah, I definitely would have missed it if you hadn't told us about it, but it was a game I really enjoyed this year as well. I kind of like you were mentioning with the art style, it is really cool because it's a Polish perspective, but also of a child that lived through it. Kind of relating his experience to another child, current day. So it's kind of a child's perspective telling the story to another child, which is really cool, and it's got kind of a black and white storybook sort of aesthetic to it, which is really cool. And I almost think it could be one of the reasons it gets overlooked a little bit, because the whole child's perspective, or kind of telling World War II for a child, is such a difficult concept that people have a really hard time with it. I was getting a lot of Life is Beautiful sort of vibes from it, which is a movie that gets panned constantly for making light of World War II and the atrocities there.
Yeah.
Because it's about, this dad trying to make a concentration camp not, just absolutely horrible for his kid the whole time. And it has some tone issues with the way they actually present that. And so it ends up feeling like it's actually making light of it instead of, like, trying to show you the struggle of this dad and put in this awful position. And I think a lot of people just kind of see that and go, "Oh no, it's this again." So I think it can kind of be a hard sell for a lot of people, but they did a great job with this.
The one.
Good.
Oh, I was just going to say the one thing that because I was reading a lot of reviews about it. I'm reading one right now, actually, just to kind of see, just out of curiosity to see maybe why it was received the way it did, which was kind of like solid 7 sort of a thing. And the general consensus I got was that they generally seem to think that it was for, like, maybe it was designed for a younger audience because of the calm voice of the narrator and sort of the happy characters and sort of like, there's not really a lot of violence and stuff like that in the game. They thought it might have came off as a little too childlike for audiences, at least at first glance. That could have been the reason, because it seems like it scored a lot of nice solid 7s with people, although they acknowledge the art style as well. This is just from IGN, where they're talking about the painting art style. So I don't know. I mean, we could discuss that all day. It's just like to try and figure out why games get sort of lost in the shuffle, but maybe that's part of it.
Right. And the last thing I would say about that, and then we can move on, because I don't want to dwell on this too much. We've talked about it, but like we dwelled on it in previous podcasts, but I think that's a valid point, but I don't agree with that. Like, I'm not saying I don't agree with Josh. I just don't agree with that mentality that it's for a younger audience, just because of the fact that, like, we don't, like, this World War II's been told in so many different harrowing ways. Like, I'm going to pronounce his name wrong because I always do, and I always forget how to pronounce his name. Eli or Elie Wiesel, his book Night, was like a really good way to look at it from a child's perspective and to look at the actual atrocities of what happened. You look at, there have been so many movies, so many games that show the atrocities of World War II. I think it's okay to depict it now, and not necessarily a way making light of what happened, but to try and not necessarily soften the blow, just give a different spin on it. Like, to me, it still depicts the terribleness of what World War II was. Like, Josh and I both talked about there are some sequences in there that almost make you feel ill because of what the children are essentially forced to do by some of the World War II German soldiers, or the Axis power soldiers. It's affecting, and it doesn't need to be overly over the top, gruesome or disgusting or perturbing. They managed to capture that while still keeping that almost childlike charm to it. So if that's the mentality of why it didn't get a higher score, I couldn't disagree more. But it is what it is. It's on my list. I'm happy with that. So
yeah.
I can leave it at that.
Just theorizing. I don't know. Just theorizing for the sake of it.
No, absolutely. It's not nothing against you, Morgan, or you, Josh. Just I'm saying to anyone who feels that way.
Yeah, no, I wasn't. Yeah, I like, even my comparison to Life is Beautiful is not even a bad one. Like, I actually like that movie a lot more than, like I said, most people just think it's awful, and I really don't. I think it was just it was trying to do something. It was trying to show something, and it didn't do its job as well as it should have, is kind of where it fell short, whereas a lot of people just felt like it was just a horrible concept from the beginning, and like, oh no, there's no way to do this well. Of course it's horrible, instead of there's just a few tone issues here and there.
Sure. I can agree with that.
Yeah. I feel like it's more just the baggage that it brings to the game, if anything else.
Yeah.
Hey, I've made a living out of liking things that people think are awful. All right, so you don't have to tell me twice. Okay, cool. My Memory of Us, number 5. Sorry, I just got a message from my wife. She's taking my kids getting on the school bus for the first time. I am, and so she was just sending me she was mad at me because I left Taco Bell in her car, and so it's a long story.
I'd be mad at you too.
I worked really late.
Left the chalupa for you, honey, for breakfast. I left it out there for you.
Oh God. Anyways, so the way I decided to do this, I, of course, am Morgan, General Mountain Time here in Montana. And so some of these, it's going to seem like I'm going through faster. It's just because there's some that I want to talk about more later. And I think the best way for me to do that, so that I'm not just waxing and waning far too long, is to just pick my spots. And Fish pretty well covered Moss, which is my number 5 as well. Very thoroughly. I would just say it's a game that you need to just put on. Like, once you get those goggles on, you're in that world. I wish I had fought harder for art direction. I think I got a little distracted as a group, but I mean, just the way they convey that world. Like, the first time you get in that little village and there's like that cute little mouse like fishing, and everything seems to scale. It's like somebody built like a miniature mouse village, and
I
you're
think
like
you could still make a
it.
case for it. We could add that to it, add a second one to it retroactively, because I do like. There were so many cool art directions, but yeah. It's a very unique looking, and puzzle games really are not what I come to video games for. Like, I'm not a big puzzle gamer, but they sort of hide. It's a puzzle game, but it's sort of more digestible for me because it's in this like really revolutionary platform. It's kind of like when you need to give your dog medicine, so you stick it in their dog treat. So they eat it. That's kind of what it is. Like, you can sneak puzzles in games like Inside and stuff like this if you hide it in enough stuff that I like. So yeah, I think Moss is. If someone's thinking about buying VR and they have the money to do it, I think the Moss Astrobot bundle is the way to go. Though this is the last thing I'll say. The reason I prefer Moss to Astrobot is simply just because Astrobot is clever and you'll probably get a lot more time out of it. Like, you could finish Moss in a couple afternoons, but I feel like just Moss is just a more unique experience. Astrobot is it's kind of a Mario style game. It's got its own charm, and it's a revolution on the platform, but I've played 3D platformers before. I've never played a game like Moss before, so that's why I give it the nod. Yeah, I agree. Like, as good as Astrobot is, you've played something like it before, but Moss is just, it's going to stick with you. It's really going to stick with you.
Yes. Yeah, it really is. It's too bad they botched the story. It doesn't really matter. The story kind of sucks, but it's just because you read these, like, you read about all these cool characters like this, like, king riding a giant frog, and you're like, oh, that sounds cool. I want to see that, but it's just like these boring little pages you turn, and they fucked that part up, but it's not a huge deal. It's like, I'd say 5, like, of the, maybe 4 hours you'll spend and 5 hours you'll spend playing the game, like, 10 minutes of it is doing the story, so it's a very small portion.
Yeah, it's like the interstitial bits at the beginning and end of chapters are like you're saying, it's like a picture book type presentation.
Yeah, it's fine. You actually turn the pages with the VR control and all that stuff. It's just kind of a wasted opportunity, but it's just definitely worth experiencing. And as a positive note, my wife said it's the only VR game that has not made her sick. So, just because of how the camera works. And
you're pretty fixed there. So, yeah. It works really well.
So Moss is also my number 5. All right, so we have all introduced ourselves and hit the first line down. So if I'm just going to keep going in the cycle that we have because it seems to make the most sense that way. Josh, what is your number 4 game?
My number 4 is, and again, like, the ordering on here is so tight, whatever. Like, but at number 4, what I had to land on is Into the Breach. For being just one of the best tactics games ever. It really is. It's so good. It's got such tight combat and strategy. It's amazing. It really is. I feel like it's the bar for strategy games at this point. If you want to do a tactics game right, you really need to look at Into the Breach and see how they've approached a lot of the problems that the genre's always had.
Make it tight.
Mm-hmm.
I'm only going to jump in here because it's also my number 4, so I figured I'd say that too.
Yeah.
Into the Breach. That game is. I don't even like tactical games. It's the only tactical game I've ever loved. It's the only tactical game I've ever finished. Granted, it's a very short game. You could probably finish it in a couple hours. But yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, it's good. Yeah, it is definitely. It's definitely something you should pick up, like Morgan's saying, even if you're not really into tactics games, because it's on a scale that's very approachable. Like, it doesn't feel like just this huge, sprawling, massive amount of rules you have to get your head around. It does a great job of kind of making everything so obvious on the screen that you can parse it. You can look at it, tell what's going on. And it's so easy to get into, but it's not, like, overly simple. Like, there were kind of a string of overly simple tactics games on, like, the Game Boy Advance for a while there, where they, like, tried to make everything a little smaller and more portable. And some of them were really good. Some of them still had the depth that it needed, but kind of for a while there, everyone just kind of reduced it too much. And this one kind of takes that mindset of what can we reduce a tactics game to and still have it be good, and it does it really well. And also an honorable mention here with Into the Breach. Into the Breach kind of takes that isometric top-down tactics game and does that to it extremely, extremely well. And another interesting game I played this year was Bad North, which takes that same idea for an RTS, which is not as successful in its take, but it's still really cool. It's like you're controlling just a couple little squads of people in an RTS while you're trying to defend an island. You can play that one on Switch, and I think that one's still worth playing. But just kind of because it pares it down to an extremely basic level, and it still works. It didn't work anywhere near as well as Into the Breach did. Like that game is just a masterclass on how to make a tactics game at this point. So
yeah, I have to sell people on that game very heavily. Like, there's this all the time. I just converted someone recently to that game, and it's just because the art style is a little bit bland. It doesn't show well. Like, if you look at screenshots, I'm pretty sure that's probably why Fish never got into it. If you look at screenshots of Into the Breach, you're just like, ugh, what the fuck is this? But when you play it, it's just a completely different experience. Like, it's very intimate because you only have a squad of 3 members. You know exactly what everything. The most annoying thing in the world is when you're playing a tactics game and it's like you have a 75% chance of hitting this enemy, and you move up there and you swing, and it's like, oh, you missed, and you're like, oh, that's great. Now I fucked up the whole battle because of some random like they basically alleviate. You get a reset turn option. You can take combats back. There's almost like a random loot element too because you can pick up drop pods that have random pilots and abilities. Like, the entire game is very short. It's a roguelike, but it's randomized. So every battle's different, which keeps it exciting, at least for a while. So, I mean, they basically just took everything I hate about tactics games and just got rid of them. So that's why I love it.
Yep.
Yeah. It's good in that, like, it shows, like, less is more, but there's still like, a lot to learn in the game if you want. Like, if you want to just start it up and play it, go from beginning to end, it's a very simplistic game. It requires thought because it's a tactics game, but it doesn't require this high learning curve if you want to just play it right out the gate. If you want to use, like, some of the other squads you can get, yes, it requires a higher learning curve, but it's not required to play the game as it is. And so I think it's a really good example of a less is more concept while still giving enough content to allow people who want more out of that game to get more out of that game. So it was great game.
It's crazy how they
did it well, is all I was going to say.
It's crazy how they balance it too, like Shay. Like every time I play that game, I just can't believe how for the most part, every squad I've played feels balanced within. I mean, to a degree, because it's randomized, you'll get fucked over on occasion, but they balance that out because you can earn points to spend to buy. So they know you're going to get fucked over every now and then, but they allow you ways to sort of even that out.
Right, and I think that's a really good point because. I've liked tactics games for a long time. Obviously, one of my favorite games of all time, game series, is a tactics game series. And I can't tell you, like, the amount of times, because I've played through those games dozens of times, and just sometimes I'm there collecting all the hidden characters just to collect them, fully well knowing that they're absolute ass and garbage, and there's no point in collecting them other than to be a completionist. And that's kind of like what you go through in a tactics game, like a typical, like a Fire Emblem type game, where you just go and you get these characters and you know some of them are just fucking ass. But you can still use them if you want. It just is much more difficult. It makes the game much harder. Whereas Into the Breach, it feels like you're getting exactly what you need. No more, no less. And just use it and figure it out to the best of your ability. And that's one thing that makes this game work so well. And that's why they take that less is more approach.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I definitely like the fact that you can indeed see all the enemies' attacks, because at that point you know exactly what they're going to do next turn. You got to prevent them from doing it, and like it makes that goal clear for you at the beginning of each turn of where you have to position your characters, which enemies you have to take out or push. It's interesting because, like, you're trying to save a city, so you can essentially sacrifice yourself if need be. And on higher difficulties, like, there's times where, like, you're on a certain turn and you're like, man, there's no way I could survive this turn without at least sacrificing one of my mechs and losing my pilot. And like that feeling feels great and triumphant, but also bittersweet at that point, because you lose all that experience you've built up with that pilot. And like that feeling in that game, like it really sinks down into like the core of like a tactics type of game, for me at least, where you're each move just feels so pivotal, and when you do lose, like, you know exactly where you went wrong, or where you went wrong in previous turns where you should have maybe taken out a certain Vec at this point or whatever. But it never leaves you feeling like you're cheated, which is like the big problem with tactics games, where you are indeed missing shots, or the enemy just moves in a way that you weren't expecting and like totally fucks you over, and you're just like, well, fuck.
Yeah.
There's nothing I could do there.
Or even like in the Fire Emblem games, you'll have like 10 fucking characters on one corner of the map, and like it takes 3 turns just to like meet the other enemy in the middle. I'm like, it's just, and it's very slow. You have to grab each person and move in the middle. Like the tactics genre is very stuck in like a weird rut of.
I kind of feel like these last 2 years have been great for that genre, and I'm hoping people are taking notes between Into the Breach and then last year with Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle, because that one took the XCOM, combat system. It's essentially XCOM, and did the same thing. Like, you start a level and you can see the entire map. You're not having like a bunch of hidden information. There is accuracy, but it's cover-based accuracy that's so obvious that you never feel cheated by it. Like, someone's completely out in the open, you will hit them, or they're behind half cover. It's a coin flip. Like, everyone can understand a coin flip. You realize if you decide to take that shot, you got a 50% chance of missing it, so you don't really feel cheated if you decide to go for that. And then there's full cover. You're not going to hit it, period. So it's not, you never feel like you're cheated in that game as well. And I feel like that's something that tactics games really need to do going forward, is get that whole, I mean, there should be room for some randomness, but it should never feel like the reason you won or lost is because of that randomness. Like, you should always feel like you can overcome it. And I think games need to get to that point.
Yep. Best no story of the year, right, Fish?
Some would debate you on that.
Some might.
Some of them would. I'm sure there's people out there. There's probably there's probably Into the Breach fanfic out there.
I'm not gonna search that. No. I'm sure you are right.
I mean, for my
open up that page.
For my episode where I interviewed Justin, I definitely did a little bit of fanfic for like the opening of that episode. So I mean, there definitely has to be some fanfic out there. But if it's fanfic, I don't want to listen to it or watch it or listen to it or watch it or read it or watch it or listen to it.
Well, I'll check it out. Into the Breach porn. It's taking over Overwatch porn. All right, so Into the Breach.
Hentai, actually.
It would be that.
Beck on octopus action.
Yeah.
I'd rather like to have some claymation Into the Breach porno.
Claymation? Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's not a bad idea.
It's the $1 million idea of 2019.
Oh god, yeah. Well, there are these giant like tentacle things in the game, those like floating octopus things. They just get up to the building, but instead of damaging the building, they just stick their tentacles in and pleasure everyone. All right, so number 4, Into the Breach for Josh. Number 4 for a 1 Filipino Johnny Depp. What's it gonna be?
Far Cry 5.
What? Are you? You're fucking with me.
No, that game was. I don't know if it was because I went into that game with no expectations, other than it was an open world, so my expectations for that game was fairly low. And as far as like open world games go, like, yeah, I've played, GTA and everything, or Fallout and all those games, but I feel like Far Cry 5 did a good job of creating this fictional world within, kind of a confines of a real world, I guess, of being located in Montana and kind of catching the scenery of that place. I think they did a good job of that as far as like the environment and everything and the people you come across and different locales as far as like trailer parks and little towns.
Trailer parks. My favorite video game location.
Actually, those are kind of generic. Maybe I shouldn't have said that, but
No. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just thinking of like trailer parks as a whole in video games. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty easy to know what a trailer park is bunch of rectangle.
Yeah, we've been able to
and...
render rectangles for a while.
Yeah, so...
Well, I will say this about that, because I did an environmental storytelling video when I first was really into that game, and I put it up. That, like, the first trailer park I came across, I found a fishing pole sitting in front of it that I picked up and started using. I didn't even know if I needed to, but it was cool. I walked inside, and it was just, like, sort of seeing the way these people lived. There was, like, a TV on with, like, the weird, propaganda broadcasts, and there was all these little touches in the house that were interesting, sort of in like sort of a black comedy kind of a way, or like just little things like, for me, as someone who lives in Montana too, I saw a lot of nice little touches in there. So it is a very detailed game. You will see some of that stuff kind of repeated as you get toward the end of the game, but I put pictures up all the time of that game, and people think it's like, they're like, oh my god, those games are pretty and they're very detailed. That's one of the things that they generally do well. So
yeah, and they definitely did, put a lot of detail into like certain locations. Like you said, the prepper stashes are all like, they all feel very handcrafted little mini experiences for you in that game, which is a nice touch because you're exploring this big map and then you come across these, and then it feels like it just feels like the world is opening up to you in a way as you like progress through the story, as you go through all these different prepper stashes, and like it felt like a more manageable like open world game to me, even though the map may not seem big. You definitely can get lost in that game doing other stuff, because there is indeed like a lot of different stuff that you can do in that game as far as like completionist type of activities, or just getting into random hijinks with the cult members, or liberating outposts that you just happen to stumble upon and stuff like that. It for an open world game, like it definitely held my attention more than I thought an open world game could for me in 2018. Because I thought I was pretty done with that genre as far as like being burnt by Fallout 4 and GTA 5. Like both those games, I played maybe the first 3 or 4 hours of the games and was just completely done with them, because I just felt like I already knew what kind of experience I was going to get out of it. It was just more of what the story was going to give me, and at that point, like the stories didn't really grab me. So,
you started in Face area, right? That's where you started first.
Yes.
You went to the middle area.
In Fallout, in Far Cry 5, yeah, and I actually beat that boss in that area, and like. I know Josh makes fun of it, but like that little story meter that he subbed it.
Well, I like the way it works in practice. It's just whenever you abstract it out to try to actually talk about it, it sounds fucking stupid. Like there's no good way to talk about it.
I feel stupid just talking about it. Yeah.
Like whenever you're actually playing it, it works. Like it actually works because you're like destabilizing the area. But yeah. It just sounds dumb. There's no intelligent sounding way to talk about a story meter.
But yeah, that's exactly what it is. I mean, you gain a bunch of experience from liberating outposts and helping out people who are trying to fight back with the cultists or have been kidnapped by the cultists. Like as you go through that, like you eventually get rewarded with like just little cinematic videos and a little bit of storytelling, character development of the person that you're trying to save in that area, and of course the protagonist or the antagonist in that area that you're going after, which is the boss essentially. And I definitely enjoyed that. It made it more manageable, that you felt like, okay, if I want to see a story right now, I can just go ahead and liberate these 2 outposts and I'll have enough experience to, progress through the story. Or, you could just go through the whole area and, like, slowly but surely, like, these cinematic... It gets a little jarring as far as, like, those cinemas just popping up all of a sudden if you're not actually keeping track of your experience, which I could see as, like, a detriment to that game, but... For me, it wasn't that big of a deal, and like
Well, there's so many different ways you could look at it too. Because like, if you don't like the story, you'll just look at it as something that's breaking up the fun you're having with the game. If you do have the story,
right,
like me and you, then you're fine. But it's obviously absurd. Like they're just like, come on, let's shoot him with the bliss darts, and then they capture you, and of course you're gonna find a way to escape. I mean, it's obviously ludicrous.
Yeah.
No one's saying that it's logical.
Yeah, but yeah, it definitely was fun. As far as like an open world game for me.
You and Shay had some pretty fun Twitch memory. I mean, it was tough watching you guys play. It was tough for me watching that.
Yeah, it was.
We had fun.
It almost cracked the list for me of favorite online experience or multiplayer experience, whatever you want to call it, multiplayer moment. I can't remember now. I wish we could do one retroactive award, because I totally would renege on my favorite character and change it to the dog in this game, because by and large, and I'm being 100% serious, that dog is the best dog, like pet dog, in any game I've ever played, by fucking far. That dog is incredible in that game. Anytime leaving it behind to do something, I felt guilty. The one time that fish ran it over, I felt really guilty.
No, he ran over an enemy dog, I think. It wasn't your dog.
Yeah. It was a stray dog. It wasn't
well, fuck that dog. As long as it wasn't our dog.
It's sad too, because that dog, when you rescue him from the pumpkin patch and he's in that cage, like, you find out that his owners just got fucked up, and
Yeah, no, it was very well. That part was so well done in the game. Like, just the introduction of your first, like, partner in crime, and it happened to be the best dog in all of video gaming. Even better than dog meat from Fallout. The goodest of the good boys.
Yeah, I was gonna say the goodest boy. Yeah, the goodest good boy.
That's right.
Goodest boy of all the goodest boys. Okay, well, pleasant surprise there. I hope at some point, even if you don't get a chance to finish it, Fish, you should at least YouTube the ending or something, because it's pretty wild if you're into it. If you're not into the story, then there's no point, and that's fine. I get that too. I'm just saying, but if you are into it, it gets the final confrontation with the father is pretty wild. So, okay. All right, number 4 for a one Professor Layton.
Number 4 is a game on the sea. You are a seafaring pirate. You are on the shores, on the open water. I can't keep doing that. That's hurting my voice. Sea of Thieves was my number 4 choice. That game, even though I didn't get near as much time as I would have liked with it, that game was like, it was just honestly a surprise in a way. Even though I knew I would love it, it still was a surprise, because like all year you guys had talked about how great that game was. You guys were wanting to send me my Xbox, and I was like, whatever. And then I finally got it, and I was like, fuck, I missed out on so much opportunity with this game this year. It was a really good game. We talked about it a ton the previous podcast, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. The water mechanics in that game are unparalleled. The sailing just feels natural as hell. It's great. When you get into a battle, it's not perfect, but it's hectic, and it's so much fun. The sound production in the game is pretty great, and pair that with the music, which is sublime. It's a beautiful looking game. The art direction on it's awesome. It's a great game. I can understand the criticism. I don't agree with it, but I can understand it. The criticism of there's not a lot to do in the game. I think that criticism comes from people who tried it out at initial launch. The game has a lot more content now. I definitely think it's worth trying to jump back into it. To me, it's for what it is. It's a great game, and I enjoyed the time I got to play with Morgan and Josh and Epidemic when he hopped in, one of our Patreon VIP members. It was a great time. I loved it, and I'm looking forward to more opportunities with it. And I'm looking forward to them hopefully and eventually putting in more content as well.
Well, I think the trick is with that last phrase you said, is that I think the content is sort of there. It's on them to have the onus to find intelligent ways to bring people back to the game, like we talked about with the Megalodon event. Find interesting things like, oh, here's a weird giant squid, or I don't know. I'm just saying, like, they find interesting ways to bring people back to the game. I think it can be done, but I know for you, Shay, you didn't get to play it earlier in the year, and I'm glad you finally did. And I know it's a little bittersweet because, you came to it so late. And but I'm glad that you still. I was worried that we'd hype it up and you'd finally play it and you wouldn't have a good time. But I remember that after the first time you played it, you were like jonesing to play that game all week. So I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I'm still jonesing, man. I want to play it more.
Yeah, I will happily play that game more for sure once Fish gets in the game here. We're still missing. We still need that one pirate that has a 50% chance of crashing our ship and abandoning us. Otherwise, it's just not the same.
No, that percentage has gone down.
Damn it,
Morgan. I'm not some landlubber that I used to.
What did you almost say? Lad lubber?
I don't know what I was trying to say there.
That's okay.
I still try to wake up here.
I know, it's early for us. I'm surprised we're hanging in there. No, Fish, I don't like you being good at the game. You're going to ruin it. It's no fun when you're good. No, I'm just kidding. It'll be fun to bring if Fish gets in there and we're all in the crew and we run into a bunch of people. Like, I'm sure we'll talk more about this later. But I'm glad you got to enjoy it. So, being the pirate nerd that Shay is, okay. I'm sure that'll probably come up a little bit later too. So number I'm sorry, Shay. That's 4. That was 4. Number 4 for Shay, Sea of Thieves. That he's got to dabble in for a couple weeks there. We had some good times, and hopefully many more. I already talked about my number 4, which is Into the Breach. Don't need to say anything more about it. I think we'll maybe talk about it a little bit later, and I want to save some time for some other stuff. So number 4, Into the Breach. Looks like we'll do so. Still got a couple minutes here before we're going to take our short break. Josh, what is your number 3?
My number 3 for 2018 is The Return of the Obra Dinn, which is just one of the best, probably the best detective game ever, and just unique in just about every way. It's really, I think it's really got legs. It's going to, I think it's probably going to be up there with something that, people have to go back and play just as a reference point moving forward for a long time. Yeah.
Wait, best detective game ever. Wow. Josh, have you ever played The Witcher 3? Can I interest you in
It's not a detective game. Not even a little bit.
But he has the Batman detective mode.
He does.
And his name's a girl. No, yeah, the Return of the Obra Dinn is something I think a lot of people are going to miss out on, but they're going to hear about it.
Yeah, it's the story. We mentioned this before, just recently, so I'm not going to go into it too in depth, but between the art style and the story they're telling and just the mechanics, especially the way the mechanics work, in order to actually make you solve what's going on instead of railroading you into the correct answer the way so many other detective games do. I mean, for example, the one we all thought would be the be-all, end-all going into it with L.A. Noire basically had no actual detective work going on in it. Like, it was, multiple choice. Oh, there's the answer. The other 3 are stupid. It's this one type thing through the entire game. Whereas this one, you actually have to discover everything on your own. which just feels great. I really enjoyed my time with this game this year.
Well, yeah, like I said, you don't have to feel like you're going to rush yourself. I mean, this is your chance to really say what you want to say about it. I will say that the only thing I had issues with was I just was not very good at the game. For example, I love the art direction is really distinctive. Me and my wife have been playing it for a while, and I just like seeing the different events, kind of like walking around the mysteries. And I just not very I don't know. I think it might just be because the art style is like black and white, and a lot of the people on the ship kind of look the same because they're just like ugly plain people. So like we just have a trouble solving a lot of the I feel like we have 100 people on there where like we know how they died, but I just have no idea who did it. It's like frustrating for me because I actually really like the game a lot. I'm just not very good at it.
There are a few, and that's one of the things. You'll kind of hit spots where like you'll solve a bunch of things and then feel kind of stuck until you realize, oh, there's a completely different way that I've not even realized that you could use to, identify these people. And you'll find a bunch more using that new, technique. Like just completely different source of information you didn't even know you had, because on a lot of games, the actual information you can glean is pretty surface level. But on this, there's so many different ways to go about doing something that a lot of times it doesn't seem like you have enough information until you realize that you're just completely overlooking something, which is it feels really good once you actually realize that it was there the whole time. You just were looking at it. You have to change the way you're looking at something, which I think in a lot of other games would feel frustrating, but since this is specifically a detective game, it works. I mean, it's sort of everyone's played a dungeon or something in another game where you get to a puzzle that makes no sense because they're asking you to do something you didn't even know you could do. Like, it's like out of nowhere, and that can feel really bad. But that's kind of the whole game here. Is you've got very, very limited like move set as far as you walk around and look at stuff and then write down who done it. So it's not like you're learning a new mechanic or something. You're just learning a different perspective to have at everything you're looking at, which is it really, really works in this game.
It'll surprise you too. Like at first you think it's going to be, you don't really know what to expect. You're like, oh, there's some murders here. Then you're like, oh, there was a giant squid. And they're like, oh, there's these weird fucking spider crab demon things. Like it definitely like there's moments where I was like, holy fuck. Like I think the game would have really resonated with me more stronger if I just wasn't so terrible at it. Did you play with like a notepad, like a pen and paper or anything like that to write stuff down?
I didn't, but I think it probably would have sped the process up. Yeah, because there's just we mentioned this before. Like the ship manifest has 60 people on it, and so it's just a lot to keep track of. And I think a notepad definitely would help.
Probably,
yeah, just to keep everything straight. I mean, the game itself is kind of a notebook. Like you're writing everything down in a book, telling you the story, so you have that as a reference. But since like an additional pad of paper probably wouldn't hurt at all.
Well, there's that one fuzzy picture of everyone on the ship, like just hanging out, that you can always go to look at their faces. Like I feel like if I could just have like a printout of that next to me, and I could have just circled. Like I don't know, it's like my brain just doesn't work well in that way. Like it's sort of like. It almost felt like work, not in a bad way. Like it had been the funnest school project in the history of school projects. It was just like I had trouble parsing all that information out. But I didn't want to cheat either. I didn't want to because you can literally just go online and get the names and plug them in. That's there's not really a good
walkthrough. Like I'm kind of stuck here-ish. Like I kind of feel like there's not a good way to give. Like unless someone's specifically helping you, they're just going to give you way too much information. So yeah, because you kind of just need a little push whenever you get stuck in this game, and a walkthrough just kind of tells you type this in, sort of a thing. So
I was still able to see a lot of it though. You can still see almost
you
most of
can
the
see
stuff.
almost everything, like basically everything except for the found all the answers prologue. You can see just going through the game. So you get the story, but actually being able to piece together what's going on in it is the whole game. To be able to tell what you're looking at, which is really cool.
All right, and we are back from our short little sabbatical, if you want to call it that, health sabbatical, and we are now in for the long haul. Fish, what is your number 3 game of the year?
My number 3, we've already hit it pretty well, but Into the Breach.
That's what she said. All right.
She did. Multiple times.
Heyo! Don't flatter yourself.
Okay. Sometimes I gotta, though. Sometimes I have to, though, Morgan.
I mean, goddamn! Nobody hits it like the Filipino Johnny Depp!
That is truth.
He's got the star power.
Into the Breach.
So, Into the Breach,
Number
yes.
3. Yes.
We have talked about that quite a bit. Is there anything you'd like to say about it at this moment, at this juncture?
At this juncture, I just want to say that it is probably the one game of the year that I actually fully completed. Well, I wouldn't even say it's fully completed, but I have all the achievements in that game to unlock the secret squad. Because you unlock, different mech squads in the game. And there's a secret squad. I don't want to ruin it, but you could probably parse out what the secret squad is, but it's really cool. They're not necessarily fun to play with. But
it's just Thousand Island dressing. I mean, they're not fooling anybody.
No, they're not. You know the ingredients in it. You already know. But yeah, it's one of those games that I did indeed get all the medals that the game has. And when I say I didn't fully complete it, it's that I didn't go through each of the different mech squads and beat it on hard, because you do get medals for... You get different colors of medals as you progress through the difficulty of easy, normal, and hard. And if you go through like a 2-island victory or a 3-island victory or a 4-island victory, you also get a medal for doing that with each squad. So there's a lot of gameplay and replay value in that game that it's almost sickening at points. I think Morgan was... no, honestly,
a ton to
like
do in the game.
There is. I mean, they plot out what you can actually do in that game as far as like the difficulties and different medals that you get. And these medals range from like, burn 12 enemies in a single turn, which seems difficult. Like if you're playing the wrong, there's actually a mech squad that is called the Flame Behemoths, and that's what they specialize in, is like shooting fire all around the map, and like burning damage in that game is a guaranteed 1 health tick off of an enemy that's burning. And to get that medal, you kind of have to specialize. You have to upgrade one of the mech's abilities as far as like how much fire they could put out. But they're all very interesting little medals. It's not like this big long list of different stuff that you could do, but there's maybe 3 or 4 different medals specific to each squad that you can try, and going after those medals kind of unlocks the power of that squad as far as like you playing with them, because it helps you understand how to use them more effectively and what their strong suits are on the map. So surprisingly, like I looked at my Switch and I didn't know that the Switch actually did this, but they keep track of, I think by 10 hours, they'll keep track of how many hours you put into that game. And the last time I checked, I was at 80 hours with Into the Breach. Which at first surprised me. Then after looking back on it, I'm like,
80 hours. Good God.
Yes.
Yeah, he's got me beat at it too. Like I only unlocked. Well, I think I unlocked every squad except for the secret one, and then I had so much else to play. I moved on, but yeah, and that was still like 40 hours.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's even secret pilots in that game too. I had to look it up, but it's very interesting.
Secret pilots. Oh. Can you imagine how much? Can you imagine how much story the secret pilots have?
Oh, they are fucking weird. They are not of the world, I guess you would say. Some of them are alien type pilots.
Oh, okay. So
they're not Vec, but
some might say they're aliens. Put you on the spot. What's your favorite squad? 3, 2, 1.
Flame behemoths.
It's the worst one.
Boo! Yeah, it is.
Boo!
No,
Is
it's
it
not the
really?
worst one. No.
Oh.
Rusting Hulks is the best, man. I love the Rusting Hulks.
No. They're okay.
They're boring.
No, you get to They get to
The smoke is
paralyze
alright.
people. Yeah, that's fun. And
Yeah, they're disabling the Vex a lot. As far as like generating those
Yeah, they
clouds and
just
stuff.
disable a bunch. Yeah. No, you're both wrong though. It's the was it the black Judoku, steel Judoku, iron?
Steel.
Steel.
Judoku.
Steel sounded right, and it was
Is
one
it
of those
the black
three.
one?
Yeah, the black
The black
squad.
mechs?
Yeah, the ones that they specialize in moving the enemies around, which is so much fun to just drag the enemies all over the place and make them just punch each other to death. It's so much fun.
Well, yeah, they do specialize in that, but the Flame Behemoth, the science
the science
class
one
in
letting
that
you
one-
swap is
that was invaluable and critical as far as like pulling an enemy from across the map all the way to your spot into the fire, or out of danger or into a position where you could hit it.
Yeah, that one mech is like probably the most. That one kind of epitomizes the entire game more than any of the others. Just being able to, all you do is move where you want to go and then swap with somebody. But like that alone is kind of like that mech. I think kind of really shows you what the game is about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, we'll probably talk more a little bit about that later when we're organizing the list too. So I'm not going to completely cut you off there.
Okay.
But yes, Into the Breach, number 3. Big
Number
points
3.
there. Big points. I thought it was going to be higher for you, honestly. I predicted wrong. Guessed wrong.
Oh, yeah.
So there'll be one semi. Well, I know what it's going to be now. Shay Layton, the professor from across the pond. What is your number 3?
Sorry I have to do this to you, Morgan. Red Dead Redemption 2 is my number 3 choice of the year. I was really high on the game at the beginning, and as I got further into the story, it didn't hold the weight for me that I thought it was going to. The first few chapters are super interesting, and then it becomes a slow burn, and then it becomes a really slow burn. And I found myself by the end of chapter 3. The end of chapter 3 is really interesting, but to get to that point, I just stopped paying any attention to what was going on in the story. I found myself skipping cutscenes just to get through, and it's that's the negative. The positives are countless. I know we're going to end up talking about this game later, so I'm not going to get into too many details right now because I know it's going to come back up. It is a technologically impressive game. Josh and I have said multiple times the sound design in this game is top-notch. Best of the year, bar none. It is a beautiful looking game.
And that's got some competition this year too. It's
true.
Good. Yeah.
That's true. It's a beautiful looking game. I like the fact that it goes for hyper-realism. A lot of times, sometimes it's a little bit cumbersome, but it comes with the territory. A lot of the characters are very interesting. The combat feels a little bit archaic, but that's okay. For me, I'm okay with it. It's not my favorite, but it's passable. I don't want to say too much about this game right now because I know we're going to talk about it later. So, Red Dead Redemption 2 for number 3 for me.
Okay, Red Dead Redemption 2 at number 3. I may possibly be mentioning that later. Maybe not. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, now Red Dead Redemption 2 at number 3. And for my number 3, I'll just say briefly that it was Sea of Thieves. I know that's a controversial pick for a lot of people out there, but I just love that game a lot more than a lot of people do. But in general, it comes down to this. It's a gorgeous technological achievement, especially the ocean. It has that nice sort of solid feeling that a rare game should have. It almost reminded me of like a Nintendo game. Very unique gameplay mechanics. There's just nothing else out there that feels like it, that I've ever experienced, at least. Now, granted, it's a very specific thing. There's not a lot of pirate simulators out there either. So, but that's fine. That's part of, branching into a new area. But it's all based around emergent experiences. And the first couple months that I played it in particular, we had a bunch of incredible experiences. And for some people, they might be looking for more longevity. It depends on how you view games and experiences really in general. I look at it like, even if I just had one great experience, that still, for me, justifies it too. I remember I went back and listened to our E3 show where we first talked about that game, and we were all like, if we can just, I don't know how long we're going to enjoy playing it, but if we could just have one good night with it. And we ended up having like a bunch of good weekends, like 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 good weekends with that game. And I just love it. So I get it. I get totally if someone's out there playing alone or they haven't encountered a lot of people, emergent experiences. That's valid. I mean, you have experiences that you have. But for me, I think I was fortunate to experience the game as it was intended, and I am very appreciative of that. So many hilarious memories, videos that we took for the site, and all that good stuff. And I look forward to playing it more. So Sea of Thieves was a very magical experience for me at number 3.
Yeah, it's definitely a great game. Like you said, Morgan, it definitely feels solid. And like even the sound design in that game, what I truly enjoyed about that game was the fact that every time you're shooting those cannons and you're shooting at another player's ship, they give you little sound cues, and those sound cues change every time you make another hit on their ship with a cannon. So it's like this kind of victory building up, like, oh fuck, each hit, and like you don't want to, for me at least, I don't know for you guys, but you don't want to mess up that chain of that sound of that.
Oh yeah, like it just builds on the music.
Yes, it's building on that music, and it gets more intense, and like it just builds that that little sound design and that little touch of like building it up, and the game registering how many successive hits you've put into or how many holes you've put into the pirate ship that you're going up against, and like that little touch to me, like you don't necessarily get little things like that in games at times. Like you'll just get the simple, like in Call of Duty, like whenever you're hitting somebody, you get that thug 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 type of sound, and it's constant, like that it's registering a hit, but at times it's just like it just gets monotonous. But whenever you do get into like those player battles and Sea of Thieves, like it really amps up all the action that's going on in the screen, and it's also ramping up the intensity with those little sound cues. And like I don't know who thought of that, but whoever thought of that little sound cue to do that, put that into the game, like I commend that person for that, because like I picked up on that and thought, fuck, that is so fucking brilliant.
Yeah. I feel like in another era, I'm telling you, if Sea of Thieves had been released, let's say, I don't think it's an old game, I'm just saying if it had been released like 5 years ago and everyone was online playing it and it was just everyone was laughing and I think we'll talk about it more later, but I think the hook of the game, I think it's important to remember that the hook for Overwatch is the gameplay, not the loot boxes. It's cosmetic. You know what I mean? The hook for Fortnite is the gameplay, not the cosmetic stuff. It's the same thing. It's just, I think it feels weird because of the context that people expect a different loop. And it was still exciting for me when I would when I first played it for the first month or so, and I was like, oh, I got a new golden hook and a new patch. That stuff still felt good.
Yeah, it's kind of a different perspective, because if you're not encountering people, you're kind of out there grinding for stuff, and the grind is just for the cosmetics. So yeah, if you're not having those cool encounters, or just going and exploring and kind of letting the other stuff happen, I can see how that would turn some people off, because I'm doing all this work just so I can have a shinier gun.
Yes, and no one can see it because I'm yeah. Or I can't see. Yeah, and that makes sense because, like, I think that's one thing they could maybe adjust a little, because the reality is, even now, I don't really feel like I need to, like, I have so much money that if they drop something I like, I'll buy it, but in general, I like the way my character looks, and that's how, that's the only reason it slipped a little on my list, is because it got to the point where I was just like, I just want to fight people on the ocean. That's all I want to do. I just want to run into people and cool things, but the risk reward is that system is a little unstable right now, because like the last time we played it, I felt so bad because we demolished like 3 ships and they didn't have anything on them. And I just felt like a fucking asshole, like, because we're crushing all these ships and like they didn't have anything. It just felt like a giant stomping on an ant and then getting nothing out of it. And I was like, I feel like the balance is a little off right now, because the way it's supposed to be is that risk reward of like, you have treasure, they have treasure, and there's a dance there. But if they can't adjust the value of the treasure right, and then how are you gonna have the risk reward? So they could still probably tweak that a little.
Yeah. I think it works for what it is, but it could be improved, I think.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah,
for the first month, like I said, it worked 100%.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's just tough. But it's still an incredible thing. Even if you can just have one great night with this game for like $9 on Game Pass, I still think it's totally worth it. Whether or not you want to spend $60 on it, I never tell people to do that. That's up to you. I was so excited.
If you have a group... that you think you could get into, absolutely, because I bought the game when it came out for PC, and I would do that again. Like, it's good enough that you have a group. I'd consider buying it for your whole group, is how good the game is with a group.
If you
don't know, Game Pass is just great to go try it out. So.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I went and bought it I was so excited after playing it the first day with our friend Ryan that I was like, Josh, I'll pay for half of this game for you, because I was just like, I need to feel what this game feels like with the full Chompcast crew too. And it delivered. So I guess that would have been a bummer if we had gotten on there and it let us down. So anyways, number 3, Sea of Thieves. All right, so we're getting down to the nitty gritty here. Number 2, Josh.
All right. My number 2 for 2018 is Celeste.
Ooh, okay.
Celeste, which is just a ridiculously tight platformer, kind of in the Super Meat Boy vein of just presenting you with challenges that look completely impossible the first time you see them, and having you overcome it is just an amazing feeling, especially with the story going on in the game, because the whole point of the story in this game is Madeline trying to, go out and challenge herself. She wanted to climb Celeste Mountain, and it's like the story going on there is her trying to overcome that and all of her mental hang-ups associated with that. And the way you're kind of going through that at the same time, because it's a tough game. It's a challenging game. Going through that at the same time, it just works. Just from a gameplay and then a narrative level. And then on top of that, you're listening to just amazing music throughout. It's just great. I can't recommend Celeste enough if it looks at all interesting to you, if you like challenging games. So,
you know what they call it, Josh? You know what they call this genre? Splatformer.
Okay.
That's what they call it. Splatformers.
I thought you were going into a joke there. I assumed joke.
No, it's
okay.
It was real, yeah.
Okay, all right.
They call them Splatformers. Meat Boy started the Splatformer genre.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of people have messaged me that they find the game too hard, and I don't, and that's valid too. I don't really know. I think there's some difficulty adjustment options.
Yeah,
with that sort of changes.
Celeste is one of the ones that I was talking about from our first half of this Game of the Year thing, with the way it handled difficulty, having different like they call it assist mode, but different things that you can change about the game. Like if it's like too fast paced for you, you can actually slow down how it all works, or you can change it so you don't have to worry about like grip strength for the game, just to make things easier so you can get through it if you need to. And it actually works, because since it's not just, all of a sudden there's no way to die or something like that, there's still a challenge there. There's still figuring out what you need to do in this game. It just makes it easier to accomplish once you do figure out what you're trying to do.
That was something we ran into with Cuphead last year too, which was our game of the year.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, we did a poll on that, and a lot of people were like, yeah, I think this game is really awesome, but half of our audience said it was just too hard for them. And that's valid. I mean, if we understand that we play video games all the time, and we're sickos, so sometimes those things
yeah.
Those things translate, and that's understandable. But there is options there to make it easier. So, yeah, and you have a Celeste shirt, don't you?
Yes, I do. It's one of the few games that I actually wear. I don't. Well, I was gonna say I don't do a lot of gaming shirts, but now that I think about it, probably half my shirts are gaming shirts. So, yeah, it's not exactly true. But yeah, Celeste is one that's definitely worth, letting people see.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you bought the shirt and it didn't make your top 5, I feel a little weird about that. That's the rule. If you buy the shirt, it has to make your top 5. That's a
fair rule.
That's weird. Rule. What if you want to just buy a shirt that looks really fucking cool?
You're a poser. We don't appreciate those.
I'm not one of those guys.
It makes your top 5, or you donate it to Goodwill so that I can go buy it for $2, and then I'll be. That's the only.
That's force it into your top 5.
That's the only caveat. If you find it at Goodwill, then it doesn't have to be in your top 5. It's passed down.
Okay.
Yeah. It's an inherited top 5.
Yes.
Yeah. The shirt got grandfathered in.
It's true. It's exactly what happened.